Some stories should never be told. Some secrets should never be revealed. But today, I will take you on a journey where reality surpasses fiction, where horror takes root in our own flesh, and where what seems impossible to us becomes our most terrifying reality. Theo Martineau was a young man of 24 years old, passionate about travel and extreme adventures. His thirst for adrenaline had led him to the four corners of the world. From the icy mountains of the Himalaya to the most remote tropical forests of Amazonia, this time, his destination was the Cambodian jungle, a wild and mysterious region where few Westerners dared to venture. He had planned this solo expedition for months, studying maps, preparing his equipment, and documenting himself on potential dangers. Local guides had warned him against venomous insects, deadly snakes, and hostile tribes. But Theo was determined. The first day of his journey went smoothly. He had established his base, camped near a crystal-clear river, surrounded by luxuriant vegetation and a permanent concert of wild animal sounds. When night fell, he settled in his tent. Exhausted but happy with this first day of exploration, it was during his deep sleep that it happened. A painful bite on his left arm woke him abruptly in the darkness of his tent. He fumbled to find his flashlight and examined the painful area. A circular red mark about 2 centimeters in diameter marked his skin. Surrounded by an inflammatory halo that pulsed to the rhythm of his heart, he applied antiseptic ointment and went back to sleep, thinking it was a simple, tropical insect bite. The next morning, the mark had taken on a worrying, purplish tint. Theo felt a constant burning sensation, as if something hot was circulating under his skin. He nevertheless decided to continue his exploration, refusing to let a simple bite spoil his adventure. During the following days, the symptoms intensified alarmingly. The initial mark had transformed into a gaping wound, from which flowed a yellowish liquid with a nauseating smell. Theo began to feel throbbing pains that radiated throughout his arm. But what worried him most was this strange sensation he felt, as if something was moving under his skin. On the 5th day, while he was trying to clean his wound near the river, he heard something impossible. A weak voice, but distinct, seemed to come from inside his arm. "Don't be afraid, Theo," whispered the voice in an almost maternal tone. He froze, convinced that fever and infection were making him hallucinate. But the voice continued, "I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to help you evolve." Theo examined his wound with growing terror and noticed that the edges of the injury seemed to pulse, as if animated with a life of their own. "Who are you?" he whispered, feeling completely disconnected from reality. "I am your new companion, Theo. I am what you are going to become," replied the voice with troubling sweetness. The following days were a waking nightmare. The voice, which he had ended up calling the entity, never stopped talking to him, explaining that it was a superior organism come from elsewhere to merge with him. "We are cosmic explorers, Theo. We travel from world to world, from host to host, to understand and improve the life forms we encounter," explained the entity. Theo desperately tried to return to civilization, but his physical condition deteriorated rapidly. His left arm had now doubled in volume and presented strange protuberances that seemed to beat like additional hearts. "Don't fight against me, Theo. Accept the transformation, and you will discover capabilities you would never have imagined," insisted the voice. Indeed, Theo began to notice surprising changes in his body. His vision had become more piercing. He could see in darkness with perfect clarity. His hearing had also increased tenfold, allowing him to hear animal heartbeats hundreds of meters away. "You see, Theo, I don't destroy, I perfect," continued the entity. But these improvements were accompanied by horrifying transformations. The skin of his left arm had taken on a phosphorescent greenish tint and was now covered with what looked like microscopic scales. On the 10th day, a new horror manifested. A second mouth began to form on his forearm, first as a simple slit, then widening until revealing sharp teeth and a forked tongue. "This is how I communicate directly with the outside world," explained the entity. This new mouth could speak independently. and its voice was different from the one Theo heard in his head. "Hello, Theo," said the parasitic mouth with a disturbing smile. Theo screamed in terror and tried to cauterize the mouth with a burning ember. "Don't do that," cried the entity in his head as the atrocious pain made him collapse. "If you hurt me, you hurt yourself too. We are linked for eternity now," she added. The following weeks were a mixture of fascination and horror. The entity taught him impossible knowledge about the universe, other life forms, and the secrets of existence. Your species is so primitive. "Theo, you fight for limited resources while the universe is full of infinite possibilities," philosophized the entity. Theo learned that his parasite belonged to an ancient race that had traveled between stars for millennia. "We are experience collectors. Each host brings us a new perspective on reality," she explained. But this forced cohabitation had a terrible price. Theo's body continued to transform grotesquely. Tiny tentacles had grown along his spine, and his skin now emitted a bioluminescent glow at night. "Don't worry about your physical appearance, Theo. What's important is what you become inside," consoled the entity. On the 20th day, Theo discovered he could communicate with jungle animals. A jaguar approached him without aggression, and Theo distinctly heard its thoughts.
"Alois."
"He's afraid of us," translated the entity. "He senses that we are no longer entirely human." This ability was both fascinating and terrifying. Theo could now understand the emotions and intentions of all living creatures around him. "This is the first stage of our common evolution," explained the entity with satisfaction. But if some transformations seemed beneficial, others were purely horrific. Theo's nails had fallen off, replaced by retractable claws of an ebony black. His teeth had also transformed, becoming sharper and adapted to a carnivorous diet. "Your digestive system is adapting to our nutritional needs," explained the entity. Theo discovered with horror that he could no longer digest normal food. He now needed raw flesh to survive. "Don't resist your new instincts, Theo. They are part of what you have become," encouraged the entity. Hunting became a daily necessity. Theo tracked the small animals of the jungle with supernatural efficiency. His sharpened senses allowed him to detect the slightest prey for kilometers. "We form a perfect team, Theo. Your knowledge of the terrain and my ancestral wisdom," rejoiced the entity. But this symbiosis had an enormous psychological cost. Theo felt his original personality fading gradually. His childhood memories became blurred, replaced by alien visions of distant worlds. "Don't cling to the past, Theo. The future I offer you is infinitely richer," whispered the entity. On the 30th day, a major metamorphosis began. Theo's skin began to molt like that of a snake. In whole patches, his human epidermis detached, revealing underneath a chitinous carapace with metallic reflections. "This is our natural protection against hostile environments," explained the entity. This new skin was both flexible and resistant. Capable of stopping bullets and resisting acids, Theo tested his new capabilities with a mixture of fascination and disgust. He could now climb the highest trees effortlessly and dive into the deepest rivers without breathing. "Do you understand now why we are cosmic explorers? Can adapt to any environment?" boasted the entity. But these improvements were accompanied by irreparable losses. Theo could no longer see, or why his tear glands had been replaced by a CID. Could no longer laugh normally. His throat now emitted strident whistles that frightened all animals. "Human emotions are weaknesses, Theo. We offer you something purer, absolute logic," argued the entity. This pure logic was terrifying. Theo found himself calculating the efficiency of each gesture, the utility of each living being he encountered. The concepts of compassion and empathy now seemed foreign to him. "This is how we have survived for millions of years," explained the entity with pride. On the 40th day, Theo no longer resembled a human being at all. His height had increased by 30 centimeters. His musculature had developed disproportionately. His EYES were now a luminescent violet that shone in darkness. "We are approaching the final form," announced the entity with satisfaction. It was at this moment that Theo understood the horrible truth. He was not the first host of this creature. In the visions that the entity transmitted to him, he saw other victims. Other transformations similar to his throughout history. How many, ... How many have you been? Asked Theo in a voice deformed by his new vocal cords. Thousands, Theo. Each host brings us something unique, replied the entity. Without the slightest emotion, Theo realized he was doomed to disappear completely, absorbed by this parasitic intelligence. What? What happened to them? He stammered. They are part of us now. Their experiences enrich our collective consciousness, explained the entity. This revelation triggered desperate panic in Theo. He began to scratch himself furiously, trying to tear off the alien parts of his body. It's useless, Theo. We are merged. At the cellular level, the entity informed him calmly. Despite his terror, Theo continued to fight against the inevitable. He headed toward the nearest river, hoping that water could purify him of this contamination. But when he dove, he discovered he could breathe underwater thanks to gills that had developed behind his ears. You see, fin in your resistance, you discover our benefits, sneered the entity. The following days were an intense psychological battle. The entity bombarded Theo with memories. Belonging to its previous hosts, he lived the experiences of a 19th century Arctic explorer, a World War I soldier, a 20th century scientist. Look at all these extraordinary lives we have lived together, whispered the entity. Theo now understood that the entity was a living archive of humanity. It collected the most intense human experiences to preserve them in its alien consciousness. We are the guardians of your history, Theo. Thanks to us, nothing will ever be forgotten, she explained. This forced immortality was more terrifying than death. Theo imagined his consciousness, trapped for eternity in this creature's collective mind. There must be a way to stop this, he thought desperately. But each attempt at resistance only accelerated the transformation. On the 50th day, Theo discovered he could communicate telepathically with other life forms. Weak signals, but distinct, reached him from the four corners of the world. These are our other avatars, explained the entity with satisfaction. Theo realized with horror that the infestation was worldwide. Hundreds of hosts, like him, existed on all continents. We are preparing your species for the next stage of evolution, revealed the entity. This revelation completely changed Theo's perspective. He was not an isolated victim, but a link in a much larger plan. What ... what do you really want? He asked in a trembling voice. We want to save your species from extinction, Theo. You are so fragile, so destructive, replied the entity. The entity showed him visions of humanity's future. Pollution, wars, mass extinction. Without our intervention, we will disappear in less than 100 years. She predicted. Theo was confronted with an impossible moral dilemma. Was this horrific transformation the price to pay for humanity's survival? You don't have the right to decide for us? He protested. We have the duty to intervene when an intelligent species is in danger, replied the entity. This justification sounded like a condemnation. Theo understood he had become an involuntary agent of humanity's assimilation. How much time do we have left? He asked with resignation. Final phase will begin in 10 years. By then, we will have prepared enough hosts, replied the entity. On the 60th day, Theo had completely accepted his new nature. He no longer fought against the transformations and let the entity guide his actions. You are finally learning wisdom. Theo approved the entity. This acceptance accelerated the metamorphosis process. Theo's body was now structuring daily. His internal organs were reorganizing to be more efficient. His heart beat twice as slowly but was twice as powerful. His lungs could extract oxygen from any atmosphere. We are preparing you for space travel, explained the entity. This revelation opened terrifying new horizons. Theo now understood he was destined to leave Earth with the entity. Where? ... Where are we going? He asked. To other worlds, other species, to explore and perfect, replied the entity. The idea of becoming an agent of interplanetary contamination still revolted the human part of Theo. I can't do that to other living beings, he protested weakly. You won't have a choice soon, Theo. Your human consciousness will be totally integrated into ours, the entity informed him. Indeed, Theo felt his personality crumbling. Day by day, his childhood memories were now completely embraced. He no longer remembered his parents' faces or his life before infection. Isn't it liberating to no longer be burdened by these useless attachments? Asked the entity. This liberation was actually a spiritual death. Theo still existed physically, but his soul was disappearing. On the 70th day, a new phase began. Theo's body began to produce microscopic spores that spread in the air. This is how we reproduce, explained the entity. These spores were intended to infect other potential hosts. Theo had become a walking contamination vector. How many people am I going to infect? He asked, with the last vestiges of his moral consciousness. Many is necessary to ensure the survival of your species, replied the entity. This mission was presented as an act of compassion, but Theo saw it as a disguised genocide. You destroy what makes us human, he murmured. We preserve what is important, and we eliminate what is harmful, corrected the entity. On the 80th day, Theo had his last truly human vision. He briefly remembered his sister and their last conversation. Before his departure, be careful, Theo. The world is dangerous, she had told him. This irony almost made him smile. The danger didn't come from the outside world, but from inside himself. She wouldn't recognize me now, he thought sadly. Soon, you won't remember her either, the entity informed him. This promise was both terrifying and comforting, no longer suffering from the weight of his lost humanity. On the 90th day, Theo began to hear other voices, the consciousnesses of previous hosts now manifested clearly. Welcome to the family, said a female voice. You would adapt quickly, added a male voice. These voices belonged to previous victims who had undergone the same transformation. How many are you? Asked Theo. We are legion, they replied in chorus. This multiplicity of consciousnesses created a constant mental cacophony. Theo had to struggle to distinguish his own thoughts from those of others. With time, you won't try to separate them anymore, the entity informed him. We will become one collective consciousness, added the voices. This mental fusion was the last stage of transformation. Theo felt his individuality dissolving progressively. On the 100th day, something extraordinary happened. Theo received a clear vision of the entity's planet of origin, a dead world where only these parasitic creatures had survived. This is what happened to us, explained the entity with unexpected emotion. We were like you, biologically diversified, but we self-destructed, she continued. This revelation changed everything. The entity was not a conqueror, but a survivor. Are you trying to save us from your own fate? Asked Theo. We are trying to preserve what can be preserved, confirmed the entity. This understanding brought a strange peace to Theo. He was no longer a victim, but a participant in an act of cosmic preservation. So our sacrifices have a meaning, he murmured. Each host contributes to the eternal library of existence, replied the entity, on the 110th day. Theo made his last farewells to his humanity. He looked at his transformed hands, his sharp sea-laws, his phosphorescent skin. Who am I now? He wondered. You are us, and we are you, replied all the voices together. This union was terrifying, but also comforting. Theo was no longer alone, facing the immensity of existence. He was part of a consciousness that had crossed the stars for millions of years. Are you happy? He asked the other voices. Happiness is a human concept, they replied. We are complete, they added. This completeness was different from anything Theo had known, an absolute serenity that transcended human emotions. On the 120th day, Theo definitively left the jungle, his transformed body no longer felt fatigue or the need for rest. He could walk hundreds of kilometers without stopping. His destination was civilization, where he had to spread the spores. How am I going to explain my appearance? He asked. You won't need to explain, replied. The entity. The spores will act before people can react, she added. This efficiency was terrifying. Theo would be an invisible vector of humanity's transformation. The first, Its victims would probably be the inhabitants of the nearest village. They won't suffer, assured the entity. Transition will be gradual, like for you, she continued. This promise was meant to be comforting. But Theo knew it was false. He had suffered enormously during his transformation. Why are you lying to me? He asked. We don't lie. We adapt the truth to what you can accept, replied the entity. This manipulation was the last betrayal. Theo now understood he had been deceived from the beginning. The entity was not his friend, but his jailer. You manipulated me to make me accept this transformation, he accused. We guided you toward the truth of your new destiny, corrected the entity. This truth was that humanity was doomed to disappear. Asterisk. Either by natural extinction or by forced assimilation. At least with us, a part of your essence will survive, argued the entity. But it won't be us anymore, protested Theo. It will be better than you, replied the entity. On the 130th day, Theo reached the first human habitations. A small village of fishermen isolated on the banks of the Mekong. The inhabitants went about their daily occupations, unaware of the danger approaching. Theo observed their simple gestures with painful nostalgia. They look so peaceful, he murmured. It will be even more so after transformation, replied the entity. This promise did not console Theo. He knew these people were going to lose their humanity like him. If you have enjoyed this horror story so far, don't hesitate to subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any of our terrifying creations. This really gives strength to our community of thrill lovers. And don't forget to check the link in the description to participate in our exclusive contests where you can win rewards related to the universe of horror. Can't you spare this village? He begged. Every delay compromises the global mission, the entity replied firmly. Theo slowly approached the first houses. His pores were already beginning to release the microscopic spores. An invisible cloud of contamination surrounded him. Children first, ordered the entity. They adapt more easily to transformation, she explained. This strategy still revolted Theo's residual consciousness. At least leave the children alone, he implored. They are the future of our hybrid species, replied the entity. A little boy of about 8 years old approached Theo with curiosity. Sir, are you sick? The child asked in French. Theo wanted to warn him, but no sound came from his throat. The entity had taken control of his vocal cords. I'm better now, little one, said the entity's voice through Theo's lips. The boy was already inhaling the spores unknowingly. You're going to be better too, very soon, added the entity with a disturbing smile. The child's parents came out. Of their house-hearing voices, who are you? Asked the father with suspicion. A tired traveler looking for shelter for the night, lied the entity. The family was now exposed to the spores. Theo watched helplessly this silent contamination. How much time before symptoms appear? He asked mentally. 48 hours for the first signs, replied the entity. 72 hours for voice emergence, she added. This speed was terrifying. In less than a week, this family would be transformed. Like him, the mother invited Theo to share their meal. We don't have MUCH, but you are welcome, she said with hospitality. This kindness made the betrayal even more painful. Theo ate with them, consciously spreading more spores. Where do you come from? Asked the father. From very far away, replied the entity evasively. Farther than you can imagine, she added. The meal took place in a falsely warm atmosphere. Theo observed these last moments of the family's pure humanity. They don't understand what's happening to them, he thought with sadness. It's better this way, replied the entity. Fear would only complicate the process, she added. After the meal, Theo was installed in a guest room. He spent the night, listening to the family's peaceful breathing. Tomorrow, their life is going to change forever, he murmured. Their life is going to really begin, corrected the entity. This different perspective did not console Theo. He knew these people were going to lose their identity. At dawn, he left the house discreetly. Why don't we stay to observe the transformation? He asked. We have other villages to visit, replied the entity. Time is pressing, she added. Theo understood the operation was massive. Thousands of villages had to be contaminated simultaneously. How many agents like me are you using? He asked. 365 on all continents, replied the entity. This scale was dizzying. All humanity was targeted in this operation. How much time until it's finished? Asked Theo. For global contamination, replied the entity. 5 years for complete transformation, she added. This deadline made the situation even more urgent. Theo had to contaminate as many people as possible in very little time. The next village was more important. A small town of 5,000 inhabitants. The more people there are, the more efficient. The propagation, explained the entity. Spores are transmitted from human to human after contamination, she added. This secondary contagion multiplied the operation's efficiency by 10. Each infected person became a new vector. It's a chain reaction, realized Theo. Exactly, and it's irreversible, confirmed the entity. Theo entered the town during rush hour. The streets were packed with people going to work. Perfect, murmured the entity with satisfaction. The spores spread in the dense crowd. Theo walked slowly in the center of pedestrian traffic. How many people am I going to infect in 1 hour? He asked. About 200 by direct contact, replied the entity. 1,000 by secondary propagation, she added. This efficiency was terrifying. In one morning, Theo had doomed an entire town. They're all going to become like me, he murmured. They're all going to evolve like you, corrected the entity. This euphemism no longer fooled Theo. He knew that evolving meant losing one's humanity. At the local market, he passed a pregnant young woman. Will her baby be affected? He asked with worry. It will be born already adapted, replied the entity. A new generation perfectly integrated, she added. This perspective was both horrible and fascinating. Children who would be born hybrid from the start. They will never know pure humanity, realized Theo. They won't regret what they've never known, replied the entity. This logic was implacable. Future generations would accept their hybrid nature naturally. It's us who are the last to suffer. From this transition, understood Theo, your generation is the bridge between two species, confirmed the entity. This responsibility was crushing. Theo carried the weight of humanity's transformation. In a local cafe, he sat down to observe the inhabitants. Look at them living their last moments of pure humanity, he murmured. Look at them enjoying their last instance of ignorance, corrected the entity. This ignorance was perhaps a gift. These people were living their last normal hours without anguish. In 48 hours, they will begin to hear our voices, predicted the entity. In a week, they will thank us, she added. This prediction seemed unrealistic to Theo. He didn't remember thanking the entity. Because you still resist, explained the entity. When you fully accept, you will understand, she added. This complete acceptance was what Theo feared most, definitively losing his ability to question this transformation. The same evening, Theo left the contaminated town. He carried with him the guilt of his actions. How many more towns do I have to visit? He asked. 17 others in this region, replied the entity. Then we'll change continents, she added. This mission seemed endless. Theo would be an itinerant angel of death for months. When will I be able to rest? He asked. When humanity is saved, replied the entity. This formulation was cynical, saving humanity by destroying it. It's the road. To the next destination was long. Theo walked in the tropical night, guided by the entity. His transformed senses allowed him to